Hi everyone, welcome to Shareplicity Talks. I'm very pleased today to have two wonderful women joining me to discuss the whole concept of women and investing in shares, and this is to celebrate International Women's Day. My two lovely guests, the first of which is Shani Jayamanne, who is a senior investment specialist for Morningstar and leads Morningstar's efforts to engage and educate individual investors in Australia. And even more exciting, if that could possibly be the case, I actually have a woman who has recently started her journey of investing directly in shares. She has also read the Shareplicity books, which is very exciting. And I have Biba Wythes with us today, and she is a social media strategist, mother, and as I said, has started her investing journey. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into our wonderful chat that we're hopefully going to have. Just to remind everybody that this is not financial advice. Everybody should do their own research and consult a professional financial advisor before making any decisions. And of course, there is a disclaimer that you can check within the notes of the YouTube. So ladies, welcome today. Thank you so much for joining Shareplicity Talks. And I thought we could discuss some of the issues around women and investing and why they find it hard and some of the pathways to making it easier for them. So welcome, Shani. I thought we could start with you so you could discuss some of your experience. And I guess I wanted to touch on what are some of the common challenges that women face when they start their investing journey?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Danielle. And I think one of the greatest hurdles is just getting started. And financial services and by extension, financial products have traditionally not really been built to serve retail investors. And that's people like you and me, and especially have not been built to serve women. And in most cases, there was always some sort of intermediary involved. So a broker, you see all those pictures, you traditionally call up and place a trade through someone. Some people still do. And financial advisors, and they would place you into a product. And the landscape definitely has changed. There are more and more everyday investors entering the market without this middleman for a few reasons, some directly related to this reluctancy that people have, which is the mistrust of financial advisors and financial institutions, but also the democratization of financial products and resources. And I think as more of us are entering the market, products are pivoting to be more accessible and inclusive of retail investors. But I think what this has led to is that the majority of financial products and investments just seem incredibly overwhelming. And there's just no resources to really understand them. And this is changing. It's in its infancy. We need to make financial services much more accessible for retail investors and especially women. But the good news is that the ASX did release an investor study in 2020, and it showed that around half of new entrants into the market were women, and that is just incredible. We haven't really seen that before, and it's really promising, and it's a promising sign that more women are taking control of their financial futures and financial independence, which I'm really passionate about myself, and I'm sure everyone on this call is. And it's also promising that the industry is starting to adapt to this, but we do have a little bit of a way to go. Yeah.
Indeed. And when I often discuss this is people don't understand that the industry will always work for itself. So for a long time, it was to the benefit of the industry to have a lot of jargon, to have these intermediaries so they could make money, etc. And I think you touched on the democratization, and that's really, really important. And the concept of financial platforms and online trading platforms and the easier transfer of information is making it so much easier for people, but it also opens up a whole lot more information that can make it quite challenging. So Biba, welcome. Maybe I could just ask you in terms of, you've started your investment journey, and I believe you've been involved in looking at investing for a while. You have a financial advisor, but you probably have come across this overwhelming information that comes your way. Maybe you could share a bit of a story about how you have actually started the pathway and developed some of the confidence to start investing.
Definitely. And this recent jump into the market, it's actually a bit of a take two for me. I tried about 20 years ago to get started, and I didn't have the confidence to make decisions about selling, or I didn't know when to sell. I doubted myself, so I kind of jumped back out. Coming in now, like you say, there is so much information as well, which is a great thing, but also it's quite overwhelming. So I think just having the confidence that's probably the biggest hurdle when you're talking about hurdles before, having the confidence to actually just make the jump, to just do it. But also having a sounding board and trying to filter out that noise. And that's something this time, having some tools and resources that I've really, gathered lots of information, but then I've tried to filter out the noise as well. So pick some favorites, some preferred podcasts, preferred books, webcasts, video, YouTube, what have you. But I've kind of got a bit of a list that I try and stay within, or markets I try and stay within, just to filter everything out.
That sounds very, very wise. So how did you actually make those specific choices? Because a lot of people get very, very confused with all the different narratives out there. So what sort of factors came into your mindset when you were choosing?
I actually, at first, I started to read and listen widely. There's a million podcasts. So I would read and listen widely. But then I picked my favorites, people that resonated with me, people that were easy to understand. There's a few commentators I regularly go back to, yourself, Roger Montgomery, a few different podcasts that I really enjoy, websites, FN Arena, but they're ones that I can understand. And when people speak, if it makes sense and it's at a everyday layman's level of language, then they're kind of the ones I filter in. And I filter the other ones out. We're both on Twitter. I see you on Twitter a lot as well. But, Twitter's one of those ones too where I have to pick my favorites, because there's social media, there's so much noise and people can say anything. So I do watch and then filter out who is just speaking in a way that I don't understand and who's actually making sense. So it's kind of how I filter. And then I try and stay within that. I've got my daily favorites. I try and stay within that because they're, easy to understand.
Excellent. So Shani, from your perspective at Morningstar, how does Morningstar approach educating women, giving them confidence? What are some of the aspects that you try and reach out to all investors to become more educated, more confident in their decision making?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, going back to these challenges that a lot of new investors do face, I think one of the challenges is that the importance of investing hasn't been stressed enough. And I think this is very much linked to confidence. You do definitely need confidence to invest. But I think something that forced me to invest was really just understanding how important it was. And, I was quite a conservative investor when I started. And I think really just understanding the mathematics behind it, how I'm supposed to reach my goals, really pushed me to go and take the plunge into investing. And I was very lucky because obviously I worked in financial services and I had all these resources in front of me. But at the same time, my parents never invested. I never had exposure through my parents. I never had exposure through the community that I was in. And I was sort of the first one to take this leap. So I think that's something that really forced me to think about investing. And it's something that Morningstar really pushes as well, to focus the investment around you and not the investment that you're actually making. So I think a lot of women don't really understand how pivotal it is to financial goals, like retiring comfortably or owning a house, or even just keeping up with inflation, any sort of goals that you have that revolve around finances. And, again, I do think the situation is improving. We look at interest rates, they've come down and savings are just languishing in bank accounts. And I think that does force a lot of people to look at other options and look at the market. And, there's a normal crowd, obviously. There's investors that are looking for income, retirees, etc., but also a lot of younger investors. A lot of my friends are looking, they have housing deposits that, are barely keeping up with inflation. And I think that's something that people are really worried about. So what we try to do at Morningstar is really just focus on the investor and make sure that they are focusing on the goals that they have, looking at how to actually achieve them, because in the majority of scenarios, you aren't going to get to your goal without investing. So we do focus on that.
Yeah. And for somebody that's starting out, does Morningstar have a nice broad approach, like you cover ETFs as well as stocks? I mean, maybe a broad outline for someone who was starting out and they were using Morningstar, what aspects of the products would you direct them towards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with Morningstar, we offer data research on all types of securities. So that's equities, ETFs, funds, LICs, etc. And I think that even just saying that sounds just so overwhelming, and it's just a lot of things to look through. So I work with my boss. His name is Mark LaMonica. He runs the individual investor division for Australia, and we have a podcast. We have webinars that are free, and really what they do is build that foundational knowledge you need to actually understand an analyst report, or understand, when it's on the news and you see the tickers going across the bottom, or you see them talking about a particular stock, you actually understand what they're saying and how it impacts you and your investments. So I think foundational knowledge is so important, and we try and have as many free resources as possible to promote this. But after you move to that stage where you are picking investments, which we think is the last stage of investing, you definitely need to have your foundations built before that. So making sure that you have a goal, making sure you understand what you need to get to your goal, understanding different asset allocations, how much you need to invest in aggressive assets, how much you need to invest in defensive assets, understanding really what you need for your portfolio and how to reach your goals. And then from there, you can choose your investments, which we can help with our analyst reports and research and rating. So that's how we try to help, and we try to take a very holistic look at investments. We're completely independent, so we just focus on the investor. It's not about promoting a particular product or anything like that. It's really just focusing on what's right for you.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. I think it's interesting because when I look at some of these investing courses that people promote, I often find that they're trying to push particularly people that have no financial knowledge into becoming a research analyst, trying to analyze balance sheets and P&Ls. And I don't know how, Biba, you approached it, but I've always advocated, as the retail investor, that's not our job. There's plenty of specialists out there, be it at Morningstar or ComSec. I mean, there's, so many services out there that do all that analytical work for you. And I've always said it's much more important to be able to interpret the information that comes your way. So Biba, maybe you could give us some idea. How did you approach it? Did you actually get to the stage of the nitty gritty and looking at the annual reports, or were you more taking a back seat and saying, okay, I'm going to interpret some of these financial statistics that are coming out of the specialist organizations that are analyzing these companies or these ETFs?
I think what you just said as well, I had a flashback because I've heard you say that before, and that was a real light bulb moment for me, that I don't need to be the expert at analysing and valuing a company or a share. And I remember, back yonder, I really struggled that I couldn't value a company. I didn't know how to do it. And I'm sure it was you actually said exactly what you've just said then. There are other people that are experts in that space. And so now I've kind of taken a step back from that, in that I would love to know more about reading a balance sheet. And there's certain things I can pick now and look at that make sense to me. Your book as well has helped me with that, but not to a level where I need to be the professional doing that. And letting go of that and just looking at it from afar actually has given me a bit more of the confidence to move forward and not get stuck there. So it's very true that you don't need to be the expert in that area, but being able to listen to the experts and then interpret what they're saying is all I need, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's always been my view. And I was an analyst. I wouldn't profess to being the best analyst in the world, but I always had a view that being able to produce a 2,000-line Excel spreadsheet on the profit and loss statement of a company would not necessarily make that a great investment. But anyway, we're getting on to esoterics. One of the things that I've picked up speaking to my female friends is that women do a lot of research. They seem to research some more. And I don't know what you think, Shani, but I think there's a point you raised that's really important about knowing yourself, knowing your goals, because sometimes I feel that women are conservative. They don't want to lose their money. And in trying to compensate for that, they just keep on researching to try and control the outcome. Whereas it's probably the shoe should be on the other foot, so to speak. We can't control the outcome, but we can control our risk, how much we invest, how we invest it. Maybe you'd like to comment around that sort of theme, Shani.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is so true. I have friends that I've been trying to convince to invest for years. And they just continue to research. They think that they can find a better ETF or a better equity or a better place to get started. And, I think investing is such a wide and expansive area. And, I haven't touched the tip of the iceberg of what I can learn. And it's my job and I do this full time. And you keep learning every day and you'll continue to learn as you invest. And I think what's important to remember is that one of the largest determinants of how well you do with investing and building wealth is time. So the time that you are actually investing, and your investments need time to grow and compound. And the longer that you wait to get started, the less your investments do compound and the less time you do have in the market. So I think perfection is definitely the enemy of progress in this case. And if you waited to invest until you knew everything, you would just simply never invest. And I found that a really great place to start for me was managed funds or ETFs, just because although there are lots to choose from, there are a basket of securities that are chosen by a professional in the case of active management, or they're just representative of the market. And you've got to start off with something. And I felt much more comfortable with a diversified investment. There's less volatility in most cases compared to individual stocks, and there's much less choice. And I think, something that you said earlier, Danielle, about leaving it to the professionals and having these equity analysts there that spend their life researching stocks. I'm an investment specialist and I still would rather do that and enjoy my life than pore over documents on a Friday night and try and get as much information from it as possible. And, I still obviously invest in direct equities. I have conviction in my investments in direct equities, but I think with managed funds and ETFs, you definitely have, you're a step back from that. And I think that allows you to still enjoy the reward of investing long term, but at the same time, you're not worrying about it all the time. So I think that's a really good place to get started. You can obviously expand as your knowledge does expand, and you have more confidence and conviction to invest in individual equities. But just get started. Just do it.
It's so true. I describe it like you can't learn to swim unless you get in the water. Exactly. You can do as much, of the faux freestyle or backstroke on land, but ultimately you've got to get into the water. So Biba, in terms of you diving in, did you start with funds, ETFs, or have you been even more brave and started to stock pick?
So as you said in the introduction, I have a financial advisor that we've been to for the last 3 years, and they're focused on funds and ETFs and that sort of thing. But I have wanted to do more of the stock picking of individual companies myself. So when I put a bit of a plan in place and, looked at what companies interest me, what markets interest me, and what have you, I've forgotten what I was going to say.
That's all right.
Sorry,
you started stock picking, I think. I think
yes, stock picking, that's exactly it. I'm glad you're listening. Thank you, Danny. So I started stock picking, and I just picked a handful a handful of industries that I could focus on and understand. But that was kind of how I took the jump into that, and really so that I can have ownership of that and I can make those decisions. I'd seen things previously and stocks that I've looked at years ago and thought, I've learned about them and I just didn't make that jump. And I've watched them move in a really great direction and think 3 years ago, 5 years ago, why didn't I do that? So what Shani said as well, just saying, just do it and jumping in. So that
pulling the trigger sometimes can be a bit daunting, but it is the way forward. Well, at this stage, I think we've covered a lot of really, really great stuff. I think what you mentioned, Shani, about the journey, about constantly learning. And I think it's interesting because we all are everyone lives a really busy life. So if you were to say to somebody who was a new investor, how much time would you need, a week or a month, to start this journey?
Yeah, I think it's as much as you want to dedicate to it, really. And I think with investing, you definitely do have to have some sort of interest in it, like Biba did, if you want to get that involved with direct shares. But you don't always have to have some sort of interest in it to get involved and progress yourself financially. So, yeah. Half an hour, put aside half an hour, listen to a podcast, watch a webinar, just get a little bit more comfortable with the terms, get a little bit more comfortable with the risk and rewards that you get from investing. I think just start with what you can and go from there.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation. You can sort of dip the toe in the water and go from there. And Biba, what would your little piece of advice be to somebody who was starting out?
I think I'd say have a plan. In your book as well, you've got some plans as well, but have that plan and then just make yourself do it. Like Shani said, listening every day to a podcast, constantly learning. We are so busy and we're on the move so much that you can do those things on the go now as well. Constantly learn, but have a plan. Know what you want to achieve. Stay in your lane and just do it.
I love that. Well, having just quoted Nike.
I know, right? I don't have any Nike shares.
I hope you're getting some sponsorship out of this, Danielle.
Yes, nobody's getting sponsored here today. This is purely just a lovely chat with two lovely women, and hopefully it inspires some women to become more involved and more confident and realize you're not going to know everything straight away, but it's much better to try and seek out those financial goals and financial independence. I always called it my insurance policy. It's one of those things when you're younger, life can throw a few curveballs at you. So it's always quite good to start that investing journey, as you made mention, Shani, when you're younger, but you're really never too old. And I also say that one of the things that I think keeps me engaged in the world is constantly all the reading that I do for my investing, and it keeps me engaged with lots of different sectors and technologies and this, that and the other, although I haven't ventured into TikTok and I don't think I'll go there. So anyway, happy International Women's Day to all those lovely women out there. Shani and Biba, thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really enjoyed our chat. And Shani, maybe just outline if anybody wants to, do they just go to the Morningstar website, or where's the best place if they want to access some of the research that you guys have?
Yeah, so I mean, starting with our free resources, so I'm on a podcast called Investing Compass, and it really goes, it's a deep dive into foundational investing concepts, and we spend quite a lot of time just going through the concepts to make sure that everyone sort of understands it. And it's called Investing Compass. You can find it on every single platform that podcasts are on, and we also have free webinars, and they're bi-weekly, so you can find that just by going to morningstar.com.au and following the sort of navigation to get to the webinars. But if you want to find out more about Morningstar as well, I can send something through to you, Danielle, if you wanted to put it at the bottom of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Pop it through and I'll put it in the notes to the YouTube. So thank you both so much for joining Shareplicity Talks today. It's been lots of fun, and I do hope everybody enjoys it.
Great. Thanks so much, Danielle.
My pleasure.
Thanks.